Have you ever really stopped to consider why we feel safe inside a vehicle? It's a psychological trick, really. A cognitive bias we construct to navigate the world without screaming. We look at a Ford F-150 and we see a fortress. We see 3 tons of military-grade aluminum alloy, reinforced steel frames, and safety glass rated to withstand impact. We see a climate-controlled bubble that separates us from them. But if you park that truck on an old logging road in the Cascade Mountains, turn off the ignition, and wait for the manifold to cool, the illusion evaporates. You realize that fortress is just 2 millimeters of sheet metal and transparency. You are not in a bunker. You are in a display case, a terrarium. I am a senior risk analyst for a logistics firm in Vancouver. My entire life is built on probability. I calculate the likelihood of shipping container accidents, the statistical variance of fuel costs, the actuarial tables of driver fatigue. I know that, statistically speaking, the most dangerous part of any camping trip is the drive to the trailhead. I know that bear attacks in British Columbia are a statistical anomaly. You are more likely to die from a bee sting or falling out of your own bed than being mauled by a grizzly. I clung to those numbers. I used them like a shield. But that night, in the deep silence of the Squamish backcountry, I learned that statistics are just a way of describing the past. They have absolutely no power over the things standing outside your door. It was September 2023. I was 34, recently divorced and suffering from a burnout so severe my doctor called it adrenal fatigue. Though I suspect he just wanted to get me out of his office. I needed a reset. Not a resort in Cabo where I'd have to make small talk with other tourists, but real silence. I wanted to disappear for a weekend. I spent 3 weeks planning the trip. That's the kind of person I am. I did not just throw a bag in the car. I built a spreadsheet. I mapped out a route up the Elaho Valley, past the pavement, past the gravel, onto a decommissioned logging spur that had not seen active machinery since the late 90s. I downloaded offline topographic maps to my Garmin Overlander. I bought a brand new rooftop tent, a Thule Tepui Explorer, the one with the high-density foam mattress and the heavy-duty rainfly. I packed my 2021 F-150 Lariat like I was preparing for the apocalypse. A Yeti Tundra 45 cooler filled with vacuum-sealed ribeyes and local craft beer from 33 Acres Brewing. A medical kit that could handle anything from a cut finger to a gunshot wound. I even brought a satellite communicator, a Garmin inReach, just in case. I thought I had mitigated every variable. I thought I had controlled the environment. I left Vancouver on a Friday morning at 5:30 to beat the traffic over the Lions Gate Bridge. The city was still waking up, a gray smear of rain and concrete in the rearview mirror. I remember the specific song playing on Spotify as I hit the Sea to Sky Highway, Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. The bass line thumped softly against the leather interior, a rhythm of comfort and familiarity. The drive up to Squamish is usually beautiful, but that day the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with low-hanging clouds that obscured the peaks of the Chief. I stopped for coffee at the drive-through Starbucks in Squamish, a venti pike place, black. I remember burning my tongue on the first sip, the sharp sting of the hot liquid, the taste of paper cup and roasted beans. It was grounded in reality. It was normal. By 10 o'clock a.m., I was past Pemberton, turning off the asphalt onto the dirt. The transition is always jarring. The smooth hum of the tires on pavement is replaced by the crunch and pop of gravel. The suspension starts to work, the truck swaying gently. I turned off the music. I wanted to hear the truck. I wanted to hear the engine. I drove for 3 hours into the wilderness. The road deteriorated from a maintained gravel track to a rutted, washout-ridden path that required 4-low. Scrub alder clawed at the paint. A sound like fingernails on a chalkboard, screech, screech. But I did not care. I wanted isolation. The vegetation changed as I climbed. The cedar and fir trees became denser, darker. The air growing colder. My dashboard thermometer read 14 degrees Celsius when I started the climb. By the time I reached the coordinate I had marked on my map, it was down to 6 degrees. I found the spot around 1:45 p.m. It was a widening in the road, a landing where logging trucks used to turn around 30 years ago. It overlooked a valley of dense, unbroken green, with the gray ribbon of the Elaho River winding thousands of feet below. It was perfect. It was dead silent. I put the truck in park. The silence that rushed in when I killed the engine was physical. It was not just a lack of noise. It was a pressure, pressed against my eardrums. No highway hum, no distant airplanes, just the ticking of the cooling engine block. Tick, 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 and the wind moving through millions of pine needles. I stepped out. My boots, Salomon Quest 4D GTX, crunched into the gravel. The air smelled of wet stone, pine resin, and something else. Something faintly metallic like old copper piping. I assumed it was the mineral content of the soil, the rational explanation. I spent the next 2 hours setting up camp with surgical precision. I leveled the truck using plastic blocks under the tires, checking the inclinometer on my phone until it was perfectly flat within 1 degree. I unfolded the rooftop tent, extending the ladder, listening to the satisfying click-lock of the aluminum telescoping mechanisms. I set up my cooking station on the tailgate, a Jetboil Genesis base camp system, a titanium spork, a collapsible water jug filled with filtered tap water from home. It was systematic. It was controlled. But looking back, there were signs even then. The birds. There were not any. Usually, in the BC backcountry, you have whiskey jacks or ravens investigating you within 20 minutes of stopping. They know humans mean food. But here, nothing. The sky was empty. The trees were still. It was as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. Around 4:30 p.m., the light began to change. The sun dipped below the western ridge, casting the valley into premature twilight. The temperature plummeted. I could see my breath in ragged puffs. I put on my terrarium down hoodie, zipping it up to my chin. The nylon fabric rustled loudly in the quiet. Swish, swish. I decided to start dinner early. I wanted the comfort of a hot meal and the ritual of cooking to push back the encroaching dark. I fired up the Jetboil. The hiss of the propane was comforting, a man-made sound that said civilization. I was making a Mountain House freeze-dried meal beef stroganoff. I know it's not gourmet, but there's something about the sodium and the warmth that grounds you. I was stirring the rehydrating slurry, watching the steam rise and vanish into the gray air, when I heard it. Crunch. Distinct. Heavy. Came from the road, back the way I had driven in. My hand froze on the spoon. My brain immediately went to work, accessing the risk analyst database. Bear? No, a bear moves with a shuffle, a heavy padding sound. Deer? Too heavy for a deer. Moose? Possible. I stood perfectly still, the smell of artificial beef sauce wafting up into my nose. I strained my ears. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Rhythmic. Bipedal. It was not an animal. It was footsteps. Someone was walking up the road. Now, you have to understand the geography here. I was 40 kilometers from the nearest paved road. The spur I was on was a dead end. I had not passed a single vehicle in 4 hours. The odds of someone casually hiking up this specific, overgrown logging road at 5 p.m. on a Friday were statistically near zero. I felt a prickle of adrenaline, a cold flush washing down my back. I told myself to calm down. Maybe it was another overlander. Maybe someone's truck had broken down miles back and they were walking for help. I stepped away from the tailgate, moving around to the side of the truck to get a view of the road. A figure rounded the bend, about 50 meters away. It was a man. He was not dressed for the backcountry. That was the first thing that hit me, the dissonance of his gear. He was not wearing Gore-Tex or technical fabrics. He was wearing a denim jacket, faded to a pale blue, and dark trousers that looked like dress slacks. On his feet, he did not have hiking boots. He was wearing brown leather loafers. He was walking with a strange, fluid gait. His arms did not swing naturally. They hung straight down at his sides, stiff, as if he were carrying heavy, invisible suitcases. He stopped when he saw the truck. He did not look surprised. He just stopped. I stood by the rear wheel of my F-150, my hand resting on the cold aluminum of the truck bed. I felt exposed. I realized then that my fortress was just a prop. I was outside of it. Hello? I called out. My voice sounded thin, swallowed instantly by the vastness of the trees. The man tilted his head. It was a bird-like movement, twitchy and too fast. He stared at me. Even from 50 meters, I could feel the weight of that stare. He started walking again, closing the distance. I instinctively moved back toward the driver's side door. Everything okay? I asked louder this time, trying to project authority. You re a long way out. He did not answer until he was about 10 meters away. He stopped again. I could see his face clearly now. He looked average, painfully average. Caucasian, maybe 40 years old. Thinning brown hair combed over a pale scalp. Clean shaven. But his skin looked waxy, like fruit that has been sitting in a bowl for just a little too long, shiny and tight. Is the road clear? He asked. His voice was flat, monotone. It did not sound like a question. It sounded like a recording of a question. There was no inflection at the end. The road. I pointed back the way I came. Yeah, I drove in. It's rough but passable. Did your vehicle break down? He ignored the question about the vehicle. He took another step forward. I could hear the gravel grinding under his leather soles. Grind. I need water, he said. Again, flat. Not a plea. A statement of inventory. I looked at the jet boil steaming on the tailgate behind me. Yeah, I have water. My gut was screaming at me. Every instinct I had, the primal lizard brain that evolved to keep my ancestors from being eaten by saber-toothed tigers, was firing every alarm it had. Danger. Predator. Wrong. But the rationalizer in my head fought back. Do not be rude. He is a stranded motorist. He is probably in shock. Dehydration causes confusion. Be a human being. Stay there, I said, holding up a hand. I'll grab you a bottle. I reached into the cab of the truck, grabbing a Kirkland brand water bottle from the passenger seat. I cracked the seal, snap, just to make sure he knew it was fresh. I walked forward and set it on the hood of the truck, then stepped back. Here, I said. The man looked at the bottle. Then he looked at me. His eyes were dark, almost black. I could not distinguish the pupil from the iris. And he was not blinking. I realized I had been watching him for a full minute and had not seen him blink once. You are alone, he said. It was not a question. I felt the blood drain from my face. The temperature seemed to drop another 10 degrees. No, I lied. It was a clumsy, desperate lie. My brother is down by the creek. He got the satellite phone. We re-meeting a group here in an hour. The man smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. It was just a mechanical retraction of the lips, exposing teeth that looked too yellow, too straight. The creek is dry, he said. He was right. I had checked the map. The drainage below us was seasonal. He stepped toward the truck. He picked up the water bottle. He did not drink it. He just held it in his hand, squeezing it. The thin plastic crinkled loudly in the silence. Crinkle pop. Crinkle pop. You have a nice setup, he said, looking up at the roof tent. Soft. Look, man, I said, my voice trembling now. I reached into my pocket and gripped the keys to the truck. The metal fob dug into my palm. If you need a ride, I see not help you. But if you keep walking that way, you'll hit the logging camp in maybe 10 miles. There was no logging camp. I just wanted him to leave. He looked at me for a long, agonizing moment. I could smell him now. He did not smell like sweat or the outdoors. He smelled like ozone, like an electrical fire. And underneath that, the faint, cloying scent of spoiled milk. 10 miles, he repeated. Yeah. He turned slowly, pivoting on one heel. Thank you for the water. He began to walk past the truck, heading deeper into the dead-end road. He did not look back. He just resumed that sliding, heavy-armed walk. I watched him go. I watched until he rounded the next bend, vanishing into the shadows of the spruce trees. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Thump, 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 thump. I looked at the tailgate. My beef stroganoff was cold. The steam was gone. I did not eat. I dumped the food into the fire pit. I packed the jet boil away. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the gas canister twice. Clang against the metal tailgate. I had a choice. Pack up the tent and drive down that road in the dark, risking a tire blowout or sliding off the edge, or potentially running into him on the narrow track where I could not turn around. Or stay here, lock the truck, and wait for morning. The rationalizer kicked in. Yes, gone. Yes, walking away. If I drive now, I'm panicking. Panic causes accidents. The road is treacherous. Driving at night is statistically 400% more dangerous than driving during the day. Yes, just a weird local. A squatter. He has water now. Yes, leaving. I made the worst decision of my life. I decided to stay, but I was not sleeping in the tent. There was no way I was sleeping in a soft-sided nylon bag 6 feet off the ground where anyone could cut the ladder straps. I cleared off the back seat of the F-150. I folded up the Super Crew seats to create a flat floor space. I threw my sleeping bag in there. I climbed into the driver's seat, pulled the door shut, and hit the lock button. Thud clunk. The sound of the locks engaging was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I checked every door. Locked. I checked the windows. I sat there in the dark, the leather seat cold against my back. I stared out the windshield at the darkening treeline. 7:00 p.m. Dark. 8:00 p.m. Pitch black. The moon was obscured by clouds. I lay down in the back, curling into a ball in my sleeping bag. I had a tire iron next to me, felt heavy and cold. I told myself I would just close my eyes for a minute, just to rest. I must have drifted off, pulled under by the sheer exhaustion of the adrenaline crash. I woke up to the sound. Scritch. It was soft, gentle, like a dry branch brushing against the paint. I lay frozen, my eyes wide open in the dark. The interior of the truck was an inky void. Scritch. Scritch. It moved. It started at the rear bumper. It moved along the passenger side. I held my breath. I held it until my lungs burned, until spots danced in my vision. Then silence. I waited. 1 minute. 2. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe a pine bough fell. Then came the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. On the glass. The driver's side window. Right above my head. It was a polite tap. The kind of tap you make when you want to ask someone for directions. I squeezed my eyes shut. If I do not see it, it's not there. If I do not acknowledge it, it goes away. I know you in there, Mark. The voice was muffled by the glass, but I heard it perfectly. It was the same flat, monotone voice. He knew my name. How? I had not told him. My wallet was in the glove box. My registration was the water bottle. I had given him the water bottle. I had bought a case of them at Costco. I had labeled the case with a Sharpie for the office fridge before deciding to take them on the trip. Did I write my name on the bottles? No. I do not do that. Then I remembered. The parking pass hanging from my rearview mirror. The company parking pass. It faces outward. Mark D. EMP number 4092. He had seen it when he looked at the tent. Mark. The voice said again. "It's cold out here." I lay trembling, my hand gripping the tire iron so hard my knuckles popped. The water tasted like plastic, Mark. Then the truck shook. It was not a subtle rock. It was not the wind buffeting the side panels. The 2021 F-150 weighs nearly 5,000 pounds. It has a low center of gravity. To move it, you need force. The truck swayed violently to the left, compressing the Fox shocks on the driver's side, then rebounded to the right. Squeak thump. The suspension groaned. I was thrown against the door panel, my shoulder hitting the hard plastic storage bin. He was not just leaning on it. He was pushing it. Rhythmic, violent shoves. Shove. Creak. Sway. Shove. Creak. Sway. I curled tighter into the footwell of the back seat, wedged between the folded-up bench and the front console, as if a millimeter of down feathers could stop physics. "Open the door, Mark." The voice was no longer muffled. It sounded like it was coming from inside the cab. I realized with a jolt of nausea that the ventilation vents, the pressure relief valves behind the rear seats, were letting the sound in. "I can hear your heart," he said. It is beating very fast. 120 beats per minute. Tachycardia. I bit my lip so hard I tasted copper. How could he know that? Was he guessing? Then the rocking stopped. The sudden stillness was worse. My equilibrium was swimming, my inner ear still compensating for the motion. I waited. Click. The driver's side door handle. He had lifted it. Thunk. The lock held. Click. Thunk. Click. Thunk. Then he moved to the rear driver's side door. Right next to my head. Click. Thunk. He was testing the perimeter. Systematically checking for a failure point. A solenoid that did not fire. A latch that did not catch. I remembered the Garmin in reach in the center console. I needed to reach it. I needed to hit the SOS button. But to get to it, I would have to rise up, expose my silhouette to the windows. I waited until he moved to the passenger side. Click. Thunk. I lunged. I scrambled up, my fingers scrabbling blindly over the leather armrest. I felt the rubberized grip of the device. I grabbed it and dove back down to the floorboards. I shielded the screen with my body and the sleeping bag. I pressed the power button. The faint backlight flared. A tiny square of light in the abyss. I winced, terrified he would see the glow. Acquiring satellite. The progress bar crawled. 20%. 40%. Click. Thunk. He was at the tailgate now. No signal. I stared at the screen, tears of frustration pricking my eyes. The heavy cloud cover. The dense tree canopy. The valley walls. My $400 lifeline was a brick. I shut it off. The darkness rushed back in. I lay there for hours. The sounds outside changed. He stopped trying the doors. Instead, he started rubbing the truck. It was a soft, wet sound, like a squeegee on glass. Squeak, squeak. He was running his hands over the windows, over the paint. It made the fillings in my teeth ache. It sounded like a transformer buzzing before it blows. I did not sleep. I did not close my eyes. I gripped the tire iron until my hand cramped into a claw. I mentally rehearsed swinging it. Aim for the temple. Swing through the target. But the rationalizer in me was dead. It had died the moment he knew my name. What replaced it was a cold, hard clarity. This was not a man. A man would get cold. A man would get bored. A man would get tired. It was 4 degrees Celsius outside. He had been out there in a denim jacket for 8 hours. Around 5:30 a.m., the quality of the darkness began to change. The pitch black softened to a deep, bruised navy. The silhouette of the trees began to separate from the sky. The noises stopped. No footsteps. No rubbing. No humming. I waited another hour. I peered out the side window. Nothing. Just the gravel road, the fir trees, and the mist clinging to the ground. I unlocked the doors. Clack thunk. The sound was like a gunshot. I flinched, waiting for the window to shatter. Nothing. I opened the door and fell out onto the gravel. I scrambled to my feet, spinning around, tire iron raised, ready to swing. It was covered in residue. Everywhere he had touched. The door handles, the windows, the fenders, was smeared with a thick, translucent slime. It looked like slug trail, but thicker, oily. And there were no vertical lines from the texture of human lips. It was perfectly smooth, like a ring of suction. I did not pack the tent. I did not care about the $2,000 Thule Tepui. I did not care about the aerodynamics. I climbed into the driver's seat. I started the engine. I tore down that logging road at 60 kilometers per hour, shattering my suspension on the potholes, scraping the paint against the alder branches. I did not look. I burst into the lobby, looking like a lunatic. I had not slept in 24 hours. I was wearing wrinkled clothes. I probably smelled like fear. You have to come see the truck. The residue. It's not sap. I shouted. He was there. He knew my name. You said your parking pass is visible? I slumped against the side of the truck. The logic. The undeniable, cold logic. I want to file a report. I whispered. We'll file it, he said. Suspicious person. We'll send a patrol car up the valley road to check for campers matching the description. But sir, If he did not threaten you with a weapon and did not damage the vehicle, he did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. No crime was committed. I drove back to Vancouver that afternoon. I sold the F-150 2 days later to a dealership in Richmond. I took a $10,000 loss on it. I did not care. I could not sit in that seat anymore. I could not look at that glass without seeing the shape of that mouth. I bought a condo in Yaletown, 22nd floor, concrete and glass, security concierge, FOB access. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I could file this away as a mental health episode induced by stress and isolation, a hallucination, a statistical anomaly. But 3 months later, in December, I was scrolling through a local hiking forum. Someone had posted a trip report from the Elaho Valley. The post was titled, "Weird Gear Found at Mile Marker 14. I clicked it. The photo showed a pile of discarded equipment found in a ditch. An old Coleman cooler, a rusted hatchet, and a pair of shoes. They were brown leather loafers. The user wrote, "Found these weird dress shoes in the mud. Looked like they'd been there for years, but the leather was weirdly fresh. No sign of the owner. Bears must have got him." I zoomed in on the photo. The shoes were pristine. No scuffs. No water damage. But inside the left shoe, curled up in the heel, was something that made my blood freeze. It was a crumpled plastic water bottle. Kirkland brand. I'm looking at the screen right now. I'm looking at the timestamp of the photo. I have not gone camping since. I do not go into the woods. I do not even like parks. But the worst part? The part that keeps me awake at 3 o'clock a.m., staring at the fire suppression sprinkler on my ceiling? That's the math. I ran the numbers again. The probability of a human surviving in the BC backcountry, alone in dress clothes with no gear from September to December is 0%. It is biologically impossible. Hypothermia would kill them in 48 hours. Dehydration in 3 days. So whatever I met on that road, whatever tapped on my window and tasted the glass, it was not a statistical anomaly. Because statistics only apply to the natural world. And that thing is outside the dataset.